Hey guys, Andy42 here, and today we are going to finish the quick selection menu from Half-Life ALYX. So the first thing I want to do today is to improve the hover effect a little bit. In the first tutorial we only changed the scale once we hover over it. Right now I want to change the material attributes we created earlier to also represent a hovering effect. So I want to have a little bit more glow and also increase the opacity a little bit. And once we are finished here, we really start with all the functionalities, because right now nothing is really happening. So let's do this today. For a quick test, I'm going to connect this here so I can see the effect of the hovering in the editor, because I don't want to put on my VR headset right now. And the next thing would be to really do the poses for our grabbing. So I just exported the hand and imported my gun mesh, and I'm adjusting the mesh to really fit the gun and export it as a skeletal mesh, import it into Unreal. I'm going to create a new socket for the gun, and here I can define a specific animation. So in this case, here's the hand animation. I'm going to add the gun mesh, and now I can position the socket that the hand really fits the gun. So in the selection button itself, once I hover over my trigger, I want to cast to the motion controller to see if it's really the motion controller overlapping. I want to make a switch on the hand. The reason for this is I only want the right hand to trigger this overlap. So this way the left hand will be completely ignored by this. I'm also going to make a variable out of it, because later if we end the hovering, I want to check if it's the actual right hand that is leaving. And only if it is the right hand, I want to reverse the animation. You could of course also do the casting again, but it's a little bit cleaner and also more bug safe to do it this way. So let's go into the enum itself and actually add our gun pose in here. So now I can choose it from the enum and I can really change things. I'm going to do a little different approach later on, but right now, just for testing purposes, let's do it this way. I created a new variable called active grip state, and this is the one I'm going to use later on to really change between the different states. I'm going to open all my child blueprint buttons I created earlier, and now I can change the activated grip state for each. So for the gun, I can say use the gun animation. For the tool later on, I can say use the tool animation. And for the hand, I want just the open animation. So let's quickly do the same for the tool. I imported the mesh here, and I'm doing my grab pose. Once I finished, I'm also going to import it again. Make sure to select the same skeleton. And then I'm creating a new socket again, add my preview mesh of the tool, and position the socket the right way. So this will be the position the tool later on will be spawned. So I'm also adding this tool here to my enum list and assign it to the child blueprint button. So here comes the fun part. Let's open up the skeletal mesh and go into the animation blueprint. And what is in here is really not a good example of how to do this at all. So we're going to delete everything in here and make it with a much cleaner approach. So we open up the animation graph. Also we delete everything that is in here. So it kind of works for this demonstration, but it's really not good for production. So we also get rid of the variables we don't need here. We're just working with the grip state. So depending on the grip state we have selected, we want to blend the poses. So we have the possibility with right click to add all the poses from our enum list in here. So we are going to add all of them. And for every enum entry we can define an animation state. So it really blends into this pose here and you can switch between the different poses. The cool thing is this is for the skeletal mesh and it's really blending, so it's not just setting this animation, it's really blending between all of them. And you can use it with a different hand also. If it's using the same skeleton, you can use every hand you want. For example, we have 3 different hand meshes with the same skeleton in our asset pack, and you can switch between all 3 of them, and all this logic will work seamlessly. So this is a really nice approach and it's very clean because we really use the grip states from the enum here. And you can also test to see if everything is working. If you go to the animation preview editor on the right side, and here you can switch between the grab states and you can see that the hand is lerping into the positions. And you can play around with the blend times here if you want to have a faster or slower blend. But let's keep it for now. And now I'm going into the motion controller and there's a lot of stuff in there that is really not that great for the purpose we are using here. So I'm just going to modify and delete quite a lot of stuff in here. I'm also making a new custom event for this because you really don't want to have this in the tick. It's really not performant and there's better ways of integrating this kind of functionality. So I'm creating a custom event, call it onGripStateChanged. And this is the one I'm going to call later on. Also, I really don't want to cast in the tick every time. So it's enough if I cast at the beginning once and create a variable out of this. So I'm doing the same thing he's done in the tick, but I'm doing it at the begin play once, and I'm going to save this variable. And this way I just can refer to the variable later on. And it's much better performance-wise to do it this way. Basically, you should really try to keep your tick clean, and especially don't do any for loops or a lot of casting in there. So for now, I'm just doing the set grip state. This is basically just for the animation blueprint. And we are going to modify this later on. Also going to delete this here and clean this up even more. For now I don't want to handle the teleportation stuff, so I'm just leaving it the way it is. We may need to integrate this later on. So the next thing would be to open up our input settings and add our functionalities. So I want one for the quick menu. And I'm using the thumbstick pressed. Of course you can use your own ones, but make sure to remove it from the teleportation because they also use the thumbstick pressed. So I removed it here. And I also added inputs for my trigger left and trigger right. So let's open up our motion controller, create a new custom event called input quick select. Let's create a new boolean called set, and depending on if it is pressed or not, the set is true or false. So if it's true, I want to spawn my menu actually. So let's select the class in there. We get the world transform from the hand mesh right now. And also save the menu as a variable. So this way I can later on call my events on this. So let's do a quick check if the variable is still valid if I let go of the button. And also create a new event in our quick selection menu for the disappearing. It's just basically the reverse from the appear animation right now. And I want to make sure if it's backwards in the end, I want to destroy my actor. So back in the pawn, I can now call my input quick select. If pressed, it is set to true, and if released, it is set to false. This way I can call the two different events depending on the press state of the button. And if it's set to false and the quick selection menu is still valid, I want to play the disappear animation. And now let's handle the actual trigger pressed event. This I want to be context sensitive, depending on the grip state I'm currently in. So I want to make different things for if the grip state is gun, for example, I want to shoot. If it's on the tool, I want to do something with the tool. And now if I set it up this way, I can really forward the inputs to the actual tool that is active right now. For a quick test, I'm just doing a print string with pew pew and tool time. Let's go into our motion controller pawn and set this up. So for the left controller, I want to call the function trigger pressed. And I'm doing the same for the right controller. And this way you can really forward all your inputs into the controller itself, and there, if necessary, forward them to the tools. So let's add the enum to the actual event. So this way I can just define the enum I want to have into my event here, set the variable and also set it in my animation blueprint. I'm also going to create an event dispatcher. I'm not using it right now, but this might be handy later on, so I edit it for now. So now I can remove my test here I did earlier. I'm going to keep the activated grip state, but now I want to call the event I have just created, and I want to set my activated grip state in here and connect everything up again. So now every time the grip state has changed, I can call different events. For example, if I switch to the gun, I want to spawn the actual gun. And if I switch back to the hand, I want to destroy the tool or the gun. So let's do this right now. Let's do a simple spawn actor node and also snap it to the component and make sure to use the right socket name in here. So for the gun, it was a socket gun. I'm also going to spawn the mesh at the exact same position of the socket, so it's already in the right place. we do the same for the tool. And right now we don't have the actors yet, so there is no gun and there is no tool, so let's create them. For the beginning they are very simple, and also this is something different than Half-Life ALYX, because in there they really made a fixed tool so you cannot drop it or throw it away. In our case you would be even able to throw the gun at your enemies if you want to. But for now it's just a simple static mesh that is being spawned and attached. So let's select the actual blueprints we just created. One for the gun, the other for the tool. And we are also going to create a variable out of it, so we have a reference to our gun and one for our tool. So here I'm doing a quick check if the gun is already spawned, and if so I want to delete the old one and spawn a new one. But I'm going to change this later on to be for the active tool, because I don't want to not only to despawn a gun, but every tool that is active right now. Let's do the same for the tool. So let's create a new variable called active tool, and this is just an actor reference. And if the gun is being spawned, the gun will be the active tool. If the tool is being spawned, the tool will be the active tool. And if I select one of the other grab poses here, for example the open or the grab or the can grab, I want to destroy the active tool if it's valid. So this way I'm back to the original hand pose without any tool in there. Let's go to our gun and give it some logic. So for now I'm just doing the pew pew to see if it's forwarded correctly to the gun. So now if I hit the trigger pressed and the grip state is actually gun, I want to call this shoot function from the gun and see if it's already working. So let's do a quick test. I can select the gun, and now if I press the trigger, you can see the string is firing. So this is already working fine. The next thing I want to do is I want to get a reference to all my buttons in my quick selection menu. So because they are child actors, I need to first cast to my child and then cast to the actual button. And I'm going to add all of them into an array. And I'm also doing a function out of it because I'm doing this 3 times. So now I have this function called add button to array, and I'm calling this function for all my 3 child actors. So this way in the end all of them will be in this array. And this seems a little bit complicated, but it's necessary for child actors. So now if I call the disappear event, for each of my buttons I will also call the disappearing event, so they scale down. And once all of the child actors are scaled down, I want to reverse the animation of my actual appear menu. And once this is finished, I can destroy the quick selection menu completely. One thing you want to add here is you want to disable the collision for the trigger immediately if you close it down. Otherwise you may overlap one of the buttons. So now let's do a quick test if everything is working. So the hover effect is working, the grip states change the way they should, and I'm also getting the right tool or the gun here. You may notice that my hand is rotated wrongly because I did a mistake in Maya, so I fixed it and re-imported it again. Make sure that the socket is still in the right position. So this seems right. And now you can see it's nicely blending into the different positions here. The hover effect is working. And if I let go, I have the tool in my hand. Okay, so the next thing would be to actually give the gun some logic, because right now it's just printing the strings. Let's open it up. Give it the right material, because we don't want to have the ghost material in here. I'm creating an arrow. This will be the location the projectile will be spawned. So let's position it. And in the event graph, I want to get this position from the arrow and spawn my projectile at this exact position. Right now we don't have a projectile, so let's create it. It's also just a very simple blueprint actor. I use a sphere for the visual representation and scale it way down. And I'm using the projectile movement component for the actual movement. So in there I can just define an initial speed. That's the speed of the projectile. And you can also define things like, do you want to have gravity on there? So let's select the projectile we just created and hit compile. And actually this is everything you need in order for the gun to work. So now I can shoot. Let's open up the motion controller again and change the check at the beginning if we switch the tools to actually look for the active tool, not only the gun itself. So if there is an active tool, regardless of what it is, I want to destroy it first. And after that is done, I want to spawn my actual gun or my tool. So this is it. I think we are finished with the quick selection menu so far. There are some things you can go in there and polish them up. If you liked the video so far, it would be awesome if you check out our Patreon and support us, that we are able to create another videos not only for the framework, but also for Unreal in general. And it would also be very awesome if you hit the like and subscribe for this video, so that way we know there's interest in this Half-Life ALYX series. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments what you want to see next.